Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to an utmost accurate and detailed description of what happens during Arks of Omen, the Lion. Now this book is a direct continuation, not just from the other Arks of Omen books, but also from the Son of the Forest tie-in novel. But don't worry, we'll start off with a recap, and I'll also get you up to speed on the contents of that novel for those who haven't read it. At the start of this adventure, we saw Abaddon and Vashtor joining forces and plunging the galaxy into darkness with their weaponized space hulks called the Arks of Omen. Angron then went on to smash the mini Astronomicon at Malak Bale and birthed the Murder Curse, which turns people into murderous Khornate berserkers. The Archivane then went on a quest to steal the rock, but because of Be'lakor's trolling, he was unsuccessful at doing so. Thereafter, we saw Farsight almost falling to Khorne, and we saw how Vashtor's plans accidentally led to the resolution of the War of Daka, not to mention that the chaos-tainted wastes of Arthas Moloch are once more growing into a lush green field, signaling a new era of hope for the Enclave. In Son of the Forest, the Lion finally awoke from his nap with the ability to teleport all over the galaxy by entering a magical forest realm. He then acquired his new sword, called Fealty, and the Emperor's Shield, which is a very potent piece of anathema magic. Basically a reverse card, but for chaos magic. Moreover, Lionel then started gathering the Fallen to fight under his banner, and together with this force, now known as the Risen, they went on a campaign to hunt down the enemies of mankind wherever they could be found. He then finally teamed up with the Blood Angels, who had tracked down the anomaly they first spotted upon the Night Terror during Arks of Omen Abaddon. All of this then leads to the start of this book, where we see Lionel sparring with some of the Risen Space Marines aboard Dante's flagship. They are on their way to the Somnium Stars to stop whatever madness the forces of chaos are engaging in. But they are not the only ones on their way there, however, because at the end of the Vashtor book, we saw him insert the location of the mysterious key into the brains of all those mortals that were captured during the Siege of the Rock. So all of a sudden, all the captives that were being tortured by Asmodai and his retinue started screaming of the Somnium Stars. Naturally, the Dark Angels found this a bit sus, and so they tried to prepare as much as possible. Every Dark Angel force in the Indomitus Crusade was asked to return. All the Unforgiven chapters are summoned, and both the Ravenwing as well as the Librarium start gathering intel. The Ravenwing find a series of ambushers hidden around the Somnium Stars, and thus forces are created and sent to deal with each and every one of them. The Librarium meanwhile keeps encountering a vision of a dark mirror being shattered by a lantern-eyed creature with its shards then bombarding the viewer. This results in some worried glances from the chapter's high-hats, as only they are aware of the plethora of dark chapter secrets that this mirror could refer to. Psychers are then spread out over the ships as much as possible in order to deal with any potential psychic assault. With all of that dealt with, the Angels then translate en masse into the idolatrous system of the Somnium Stars, while their task forces ambush the supposed Chaos Ambushers. Initially, the prognosis seems great, as the Unforgiven far outnumber the forces of Chaos, but the various esoteric modifications and mutations of their fleet do spark some worry. Accompanying the Dark Mechanicus Space Hulk, the Netherworld Blade, is a vast collection of nightmare fuel, which funnily enough includes a brass pyramid that is propelled forward by massive bat wings. Sorta as if Avenged Sevenfold went into Egypt. Anyways, a massive void battle ensues, with the traders waiting for ambushers that will never arrive, and the Dark Angels reenacting Titanic with the Netherworld Blade. And as the late Ark of Omen sinks into the void, the Dark Angels set sail towards the son of Idolatress, well basically to bitch slap Vashtor back to warp space. Azrael soon was in for quite the scare, however, as they spotted Vashtor's creation. See, hidden behind the sun was Caliban Reborn, a real-sized replica of their home planet, built from metal, obsidian and fire. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the entire plan Vashtor has been working on throughout this entire story was building a Caliban diorama using pieces of the original. A project that is probably making Trazyn cry with jealousy. Now, you can probably imagine how shocked and furious the Unforgiven were at the sight of this, but with such an ancient and experienced force, they surely must be able to keep a hold of themselves and come up with a tactical plan. Well, no. The Dark Angels go full Angron, and all forces in the system charge towards this unholy desecration of their ancient homeworld with reckless abandon. Now, some of you might remember that Vashtor had invented a technology that allowed him to create tiny subrealms of warp space. he used his technology originally to power his big dick cannons that shot down the rock's void shields. Well, it turns out that you can also hide an entire Chaos fleet in it. So while the Dark Angels thought they had the upper hand, a fleet to rival Heresy-era legions start to pour from the heart of Caliban Reborn, or Wormwood as Vashtor calls it. The Vengeful Spirit with Abaddon, the Orc Unleashed with Vashtor, a metric fuckton of Chaos ships from all sorts of warbands, and of course the Black Legion. Furthermore, we finally learn the full extent of Vashtor's plan. All the way during the War in Heaven, the Old Ones created a series of devastating weapons that even they soon realized were too destructive to control. After they started to lose the war against the Cathan and the Necrons, they secretly hid all these weapons in a secret vault in the webway. The key to this vault they broke into 3 pieces. One is the Plague Heart, which you might remember from Gav Thorpe's The Unforgiven novel. This one is collected and currently forms the core of Wormwood. Another one is Ouroboros, which is a ritualistic aspect of the key that was originally formed by the planet Caliban. By combining enough fragments of the destroyed planet, Vashtor has managed to resurrect Ouroboros, or at least the aspect needed for the key. The final piece of the key is the Tuchula Engine, another familiar artifact, as this thing also played a crucial role during the Horus Heresy. This device is currently aboard the Rock, and because of the Rock's presence in the system, the key now starts to complete itself. Once it does, this infernal device will start to drill a way through the webway in a search for the vault that contains the Old One's weaponry that Abby and Vashi want to get their hands on, obviously. So, by the way, let me just point out to you that these two have now plunged the entire galaxy into untold levels of chaotic madness, just for their first step of the plan, which in and of itself is only a setup plan for the 14th Crusade. Quite a glow up from Armless to Disappointment, eh? That being said, don't count the victory yet, as the Rock is still approaching with a vast collection of Exterminatus class weaponry they kept stashed away since the Heresy. In order to utilize these, however, the Angels first have to destroy the planet's anti-air weaponry, and thus they launch a massive drop pod attack targeting Vashtor's Warpforged Palace. It is a brutal fight against uncountable biomechanical monstrosities, but eventually they do manage to enter the center of the palace. And it was all a trap. Instead of housing Vashtor or an imported asset, all they see is a massive summoning altar surrounded by thousands of cornades. You may sense where this is going. You would be correct, because as they walk into the room, Angron gets summoned right on top of them. In the void above Wormwood, meanwhile, the opposite happens, because as the Black Legion is dismantling the Dark Angels, a massive Imperial force, led by Dante and his Blood Angels, suddenly translates into the system. They join the fray, while Lionel forest walks onto the planet together with the Risen. So good news in orbit, but down below matters seem very dire. Azrael has managed to retreat most of his forces into cover, but only by sacrificing the majority of the Deadwing and the Librarium in order to stop Angron's blades. Even Belial, Grand Master of the Deadwing, got mauled in this retreat and had to be carried away before his unconscious body was crushed by Angron. Fortunately, Abaddon has drawn his forces away from orbit to avoid being surrounded, and thus the Blood Angels can launch a massive drop pod assault on the World Eaters. Aerial shock troops, led by Dante himself, as well as a massive contingent of dreadnoughts, deliver so much firepower that even Angron is staggered. That being said, both Abaddon and Vashtor are a little concerned with this, as in their words, Wormwood is a pointless meat grinder. Everyone on the planet will die the moment the key becomes active anyways. So in order to achieve this, the Orc Unleashed rushes to the Rock, and upon arrival, Vashtor starts to molest its machines with all due haste. Pretty soon he encounters the rotting child from Angels of Caliban that acts as the mouth of the Tuchula engine, and they together warp out of existence. Back in the magical realm at the core of Wormwood, Vashtor starts to assemble the final components and starts booting up the so-called Dissonance engine. By the way, before you get confused, Wormwood, the key, and the Dissonance engine are basically the same thing. Anyways, on the surface, Angron is harvesting skulls for Khorne on an industrial scale, with Blood and Dark Angels alike falling by the dozens. The Blood Angels even sacrifice a part of the Sanguinary Guard just so Dante can get a surprise hit in with the Ex Mortalis, but Angron's block hits him so hard that Dante is swatted through layers of concrete. Angron approaches to finish off the Blood Angel Chapter Master, when all of a sudden coils of shadow start to wrap around him. and a mysterious plant life starts to blossom on the battlefield. Fuckmothering Lionel Johnson walks into the battlefield and draws Angron away from the wounded remains of the Blood Angels chapter master. Azrael and his forces can't believe their eyes, but as Angron chases after the first Primarch, they quickly rush to defend their grievously wounded cousins from the World Eaters. Vashtor meanwhile has about finished his machine, and the planet starts to come alive, with Imperials and traitors alike being crushed into pancakes by massive cogwheels, or being burned into chicken nuggets by spraying magma. Amongst this apocalyptic hellscape, Lionel and Angron go at each other. The Lion maintains a defensive stance against Angron's fury, but eventually manages to hit him in the head with his shield. This surprisingly has a very high knockback, and Angron is catapulted into a pile of rubble. Angron then responds by throwing a score of tanks at the Lion, with such speed that even Lionel can dodge them all. They then descend deeper into the planet, where the magic of the warp starts to enhance their battle to titanic proportions. Talons of shadow start to tear at Angron. Dozens of little watchers watch on from the shadowy tree figments, only to run away as Angron's attacks suddenly start to spawn meteorites with every swing. Eventually, Lionel manages to get the upper hand by abusing Angron's wrath against him. As he rushes to hack the Lion apart, Johnson drops to one knee and simply watches as Angron impales himself on the fealty. Like a pinned insect, the Lion then stabs him to the ground and smashes his head off with the Emperor's shield. All the other forces meanwhile start a mass retreat. Both the Loyalists and Chaos forces rush to any ship they can find before the ground literally disappears beneath their feet. Dante and Azrael have almost reached the extraction zone when they suddenly stumble upon a great and clean one with an army of Nurgle-like demons. They likely would have gotten owned here, but conveniently the Risen show up just in time to save their ass. In orbit meanwhile, the Rock has destroyed the Orc Unleashed and is getting ready to shoot at Wyrmwood, but Lionel advises against it. Whatever magics Vashtor was up to, it is too late to stop them now. The only thing that can be done still is retreating, so they can fight another day. They leave, the key is activated, and Abaddon looks upon the void with satisfaction. Sure, the return of Lionel is concerning, but with Vashtor and the Dissonance engine at his side, things are looking good. The book then ends on an inquisitorial ship that has obtained footage from the final events at Idolatris. They see how Wyrmwood tears a literal hole in the fabric of reality itself, creating a silvery planet-sized rift leading into the webway. There's obvious shock at this phenomenon, but as they watch the webway being violated, a very interesting question is raised. Where the fuck are the Eldari? Surely they would have seen this coming, so what the hell have they been up to? Well, I have to agree with the Inquisitor here, that is indeed a very good question, but we will probably have to wait until Balls of Silver, the Khan, before we get an answer to that. So that wraps up the Arks of Omen series. Please let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'm personally rather intrigued to see where Abaddon is going from here. And of course also, what will the Dark Angels look like in a couple years? Regardless, for now that's all I got for you today. If you like the content, please consider subscribing or joining us on Patreon. Have a nice evening, and don't forget your nightly prayers to Nagash.